Right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our branch of Bilingualism Matters, which is at Penn State. It is located specifically within Penn State. We have a center called the Center for Language Science. And the Center for Language Science is this really wonderful group of interdisciplinary researchers interested in language. So we have linguists, we have psycholinguists, we have speech language pathologists, we have cognitive neuroscientists. And we're all interested in language and using, lots of different methods and asking different kinds of questions. And we come together each week for a meeting and discussion. And it's a really, really wonderful place to do research on language. So this is where our Bilingualism Matters branch is hosted. And we have graduate assistants who support the work of our branch. So we're very fortunate to have these. So our graduate assistants, they rotate each semester. So it's a really wonderful chance for us to get a lot of work done and also a wonderful training opportunity for the students. So these graduate assistants contribute to our branch's productivity, and they also end up gaining a lot of unique training in communication for general audiences. I think I just click, right? There we go. Okay, so Penn State, in case you don't know, so what you see here is a map of Pennsylvania, and we are, you've likely heard of the state of Pennsylvania, and we are, so this is it, and we are right smack in the middle, so where this red arrow is here. So right smack in the middle, really surrounded by a lot of very actually rural communities. So the major cities of Pennsylvania are Pittsburgh on the west side here, and Philadelphia on the east side, and we're right smack in the middle of the state, so not really that close to either of those cities. So, in terms of, like, for example, football, American football support, we're split between the middle. Local folks are split between, the Pittsburgh teams and the Philly teams. It's a rural state, and so we're surrounded with a lot of rural communities, and many of these folks would consider themselves to be English monolingual, although of course we know that that's not such a simple category, and certainly there's a lot of variation in terms of the kinds of English that are spoken in this area. And then there's a smaller number of multilingual communities that are local to the area that include Pennsylvania Dutch speakers, which is a really, really interesting language context. So a typical year for us in terms of our outreach program involves a number of different kinds of activities. So we'll do activities and demonstrations at local science fairs and festivals. We give workshops for families and educators that are working with multilingual children on campus or within the local school district. Excuse me. We give workshops and we do events for middle and high school aged youth. We collaborate with our local area school districts, so they may invite us to do a professional development session for their teachers. We've also collaborated with teachers to develop some resources. We publish a biannual newsletter, which is put together, excuse me, by our grad students. Good thing we're not in person, because y'all would be terrified right now. I'm just going to take a sip of my water. Excuse me for a minute. It's not COVID though. Okay. So we publish a biannual newsletter, and we have a pretty strong social media presence that our graduate students also contribute to. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about, just give you some sort of examples of each of these things. I'm not going to go into full detail about our whole program, but just give you some examples of some of these kinds of activities in a typical year. So when we go to things like science fairs, we bring different activities and demonstrations. So this is an example of an EEG, a group from one of our labs from Jeanette Von Hell's lab, demonstrating how the EEG works. So, of course, it's cool to see somebody capped and to be able to see kind of brain waves on the screen here and see the electrodes and things. And as you can see, this volunteer thankfully was having a really good time with it. But we also try to connect it to some concept from the science, that the research that we've learned and what we've learned through using this method. So this is just a little sort of it's a sheet that we put in that sort of serves as a talking point and an illustration for some of our participants. So we talk about the cognate effect that's been observed using EEG. So we kind of explain what cognates are, and then we talk about how bilingual and monolingual brains have been found to respond differently to cognates, and sort of what that tells us about, you know, the bilingual versus the quote unquote monolingual brain. So that's one example of something we might do at a science fair. We also create a lot of hands-on learning opportunities for our youth. So these are 2 annual events that we participate in. We actually just brought our Language and Linguistics Day for high schoolers back in person this year, and it was a smashing success. We're thrilled. And actually this was also, this STEM and Vision Career Day was also back in person this year for the first time since pre-pandemic. So this is the STEM and Vision Career Day is actually organized by our College of Science, and they bring in, it used to be for young women. Now it's just for sort of minorities, people who tend to be underrepresented in the sciences, young people who tend to be underrepresented in the sciences. And so they come to campus for a day of workshops and just kind of networking. It's really a wonderful event. And we typically conduct a workshop for them on language science. And I usually work very closely with one of our grad RAs to develop a workshop on their research area. So one of the things that we really try to focus on with our grad students is making sure that the outreach that they're participating in and assisting with is actually also kind of feeding their research interests and enhancing and helping them to develop their research interests in a sense as well. So this is Slin Lai, who's teaching back here. And this year she did a workshop on statistical learning with infants that went extremely well. And then our Language and Linguistics Day for high schoolers this is all us. So this is a CLS event, and we bring students from local area high schools. This year we had about 100 students from, I think, 4 different schools, and they are junior and senior year either English or foreign language students, and they come and we do several workshops with them. We do a workshop on linguistic diversity. We did a workshop this year on language and thought, and one on the sounds of English. And then they end the day with a linguistics competition where we use puzzles from the North American Computational Linguistics Olympiad, or puzzles which are, don't let the name fool you, they really are kind of traditional linguistic analysis type puzzles. And then our graduate students also usually create 1 or 2 puzzles for them to work through as well. And so they work their way through these puzzles, and we have calculate points, and there's a winning team. Everybody goes home with a little party favor as well. So that was, we're thrilled to have been able to bring that back in person this year. We also have collaborations with teachers. So the local, this is one example of that. So the teachers, the so-called ESL, so English as a second language, is what our students, our bilingual students, are called technically and within our school systems, and English language learners here. And so these teachers were looking to create a resource because they were finding that the teachers that were working, many of the teachers, the teacher leaders in this group were finding that many of the teachers who were working with these students were either not able to identify when someone had a learning difficulty, or they might be concerned that there was a learning difficulty when there wasn't. So this is a story that you all know very well, happens again and again in a lot of places. And so we worked with them to create this guide that would start to provide some information that would help teachers to be able to do this, bringing together some of the research. This particular part that you're looking at here pulled out the languages that these teachers are most commonly working with in terms of their student populations, and tried to help them understand some of the phonological differences and maybe some typographical differences between these 2 languages that might help them to understand a little bit better some of the things that their students are producing. So this is our newsletter. So each semester, our graduate RA cohort creates a newsletter. The newsletter is it's actually not really a newsletter technically, really it's a research translation kind of magazine, or mini magazine or something. And so the graduate RAs will select a theme that is based on their research interests. So we've done cognates, we've done linguistic diversity. Actually, this past semester's newsletter was on learner motivation because one of our students was very interested in that. And in the newsletter, we'll have a research summary where the students will pull together some research, that they think would be worthwhile to translate from this particular area, and they will write a summary that undergoes extensive revision and lots of back and forth with me, because this is actually a very difficult kind of writing to do, especially for students who are just now figuring out how to do academic writing. So it's a big kind of shift for them, but very important to do, I think. And then we'll have a featured partner, somebody who maybe works on the area, the topic that is the focus of the newsletter, or someone from the community who might be able to shed some light on the topic. And then we'll either have kind of a section of tips or a little fun piece. So this semester's fun piece was like a logic puzzle about learner motivation. You should definitely check it out if you like logic puzzles and you want to learn a little bit about the research on learner motivation. So that's our newsletter, and you can find these all on our website here. We also have a fairly strong social media presence. We try to post, once or twice a week, and we'll do things like spotlights on our members. So this is a spotlight on Amy Crossan, who is one of our faculty members in the education department, who works on literacy with bilingual children. And we'll do an interview that sort of it naturally lends itself to kind of this very translational way of speaking, and lets people into some aspect of bilingualism research, or we'll do, sometimes we'll find some interesting kind of news articles that have been written for general audiences, and we'll write a little short synopsis, or this one is a YouTube video, actually, a little short synopsis, just to kind of curate some information for people, of course, because people are on social media. So this is where we want to meet them where they're at, curate some information for them to consume about the research on bilingualism or language more generally. We also have a page where we, and this came to be during the pandemic, but we've kind of kept it going, where we actually have some activities that students can, that families can go to and just say, if, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, some parents want to do a language science activity with their kids, or some kids are, want to do a little language science activity. This is one based on the WUG test. So kind of teaching people about that sort of that method, the WUG test, and more generally about sort of that kind of language acquisition research. We have a video that we created about the articulatory system. So you should definitely check that out. It's quite fun. And a number of other activities for kids to do, families to do at home. And that you can find on this website here. So that's kind of just a little taste of the kinds of things we do, and sort of, again, it's really, capitalizing on our interdisciplinary community, and the fact that we have these, graduate student RAs, to really create a program that is interdisciplinary, that provides training opportunities, and also translates information in a way that will make it more accessible to people. And the idea here is that, we really want to build bridges. We want to, and this is, of course, not news to any of you. It's really the network's goal in general, that we want to build bridges between researchers and the public. And here, what we really hope to do is, we're all researchers. We fight really hard for, research is hard to do, and these results and conclusions that that come out of our research, we would like for them to, we like to build these bridges so that they can, they can travel to the general public and potentially play an essential role in decision and policy making related to language and multilingualism. So that's it for me. Oops.